Picture this. You are on a truly great first date.
The kind where the conversation is just flowing effortlessly.
Exactly. The atmosphere is perfect, maybe the candlelight is hitting just right, and you feel that genuine, rare spark.
Yeah, that is the best feeling.
But then the server approaches
Mm.
and drops that little black book right in the middle of the table.
Oh, man. The ultimate record scratch moment.
It really is. In an absolute instant, the entire energy in the room shifts. I mean, it
Yeah.
is no longer just dinner and drinks. It suddenly becomes this high-stakes values test.
Yeah, it completely changes the vibe. And we are taking a deep dive into exactly why that happens today. We have pulled together, honestly, an incredibly revealing stack of sources for you.
Mm-hmm.
We are looking at a recent PubMed study on gender roles, brand new Pew Research Center data from March 2025, looking at the gender pay gap, YouGov insights on how people actually split their bills, plus the Fidelity 2026 Couples and Money Study, and some really practical behavioral research from Wise and Talker Research.
That is quite the stack of data.
It is, but our mission here is to figure out why this tiny, seemingly insignificant piece of paper triggers the absolute biggest money conversation that couples try their hardest to avoid.
Right, because I think we have all been at that table. I always think of it as hovering over the bill, like you are trying to defuse a bomb, but you and your date are holding completely different instruction manuals.
That is a perfect way to put it. A bomb without a manual.
Yeah, like your hand is twitching toward your wallet, you are watching them out of the corner of your eye. You think cutting the red wire by paying the whole thing means, I am generous and capable.
Right.
Meanwhile, they think cutting the red wire means, oh, you do not think I can take care of myself?
Yeah.
On the surface, it feels like we are just awkwardly trying to be polite because nobody wants to look cheap on a Thursday night.
See, I am going to respectfully challenge the idea that it is just about politeness.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When that check lands, what you are actually doing in real time is testing for tradition. You are testing for equality, and you are testing for intention.
Okay, that makes sense.
You are basically trying to reverse engineer a stranger's entire worldview based entirely on whether they reach for a piece of leather. I mean, it is a microcosm of how they view power.
This is AI Dialogue Lab, and today we are asking a very human question. When the bill arrives, what actually feels fair?
It is a profoundly loaded question.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that tiny moment with the bill forces us to look at what those underlying values actually mean in practice. When someone reaches for their wallet, we have to ask, what mechanism is driving that reflex?
Well, this is where historical tradition violently clashes with modern autonomy.
Yes.
Depending on the context, and honestly, depending on the specific person sitting across from you, paying the bill can symbolize a multitude of conflicting things.
Totally.
Sometimes it is a genuine gesture of care, but sometimes it is just muscle memory from decades of societal conditioning. But it always carries weight.
It does carry weight, and that weight has a psychological flip side. The PubMed study on gender roles digs directly into this.
What do they find?
They analyzed how these early romantic financial exchanges play out, and the study poses a really fascinating question. They ask, at what point does paying stop being a generous gift and start operating as a subtle form of pressure or even control?
Wait, let me play devil's advocate there for a second.
Go for it.
Calling it control feels a bit heavy-handed for a Tuesday night pasta dinner, doesn't it?
I mean, maybe a little.
Doesn't that risk overanalyzing what might just be a person trying to do something nice? A lot of people were simply raised with the idea that providing is how you show respect.
Oh, for sure. And it is not about villainizing the person paying. The PubMed research points to the subtle psychological mechanism of indebtedness.
Okay, indebtedness, like keeping score.
Right. In early dating, humans are incredibly sensitive to reciprocity. When one person consistently pays, it establishes this subtle financial leverage.
I see.
It sets a precedent where the payer often implicitly gets to dictate the terms of the next encounter. They paid for dinner, so they suggest the next activity.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And the lower earner or the non-payer might start feeling a quiet obligation to accommodate simply because they are not footing the bill.
I see what you mean. The tension isn't necessarily intentional manipulation. It is the unspoken expectation hanging over the coffee cups. It is that quiet internal calculation of, well, if I let them pay, what does that mean I owe them emotionally or physically?
Yes.
Versus if I insist on splitting, am I aggressively rejecting their care? And I think it is crucial we establish a boundary here. We are purely exploring the tension of these expectations.
Right. We are not dealing in rigid stereotypes of how any specific gender should act.
Exactly, because those absolutes just do not reflect the nuanced reality of how modern couples connect.
Precisely. And because that traditional script is packed with these psychological landmines, people desperately search for a new rule.
They want a map.
Yeah, they want a mathematical formula to save them from the sheer vulnerability of the moment.
Which brings us to the menu of common first date strategies. People use these as a shield.
Oh, 100%.
You have the classic inviter pays rule. You have the strict down the middle 50-50 split.
The classic splitting the check.
Right. And then you have the rotating method. You know, the whole I have got this one, you get the next one approach.
Yeah.
Or the rarest approach of all, actually discussing how you want to handle the bill before you even look at the menu.
Good luck with that last one. I mean, the problem is that the myth of the perfect formula completely shatters the second it makes contact with reality.
How so?
Well, take the inviter pays rule. In a formal 1950s dating context, sure, that worked.
Yeah.
Today, it is a logistical nightmare. The language of modern dating is just incredibly vague.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a text that says, hey, want to grab coffee sometime?
Yeah, what does that even mean financially?
Exactly. It is completely ambiguous. Is that a formal invitation binding the sender to a financial contract? Or is that just a mutual suggestion to coexist in a cafe for 45 minutes?
Exactly the point. The YouGov insights on bill splitting highlight this confusion beautifully.
What do the numbers say?
They found that while people claim to follow these rules, the actual application is entirely inconsistent. And think about the rotating rule. You know, I will get the next one. That implies there will be a next one.
Right.
On a first date, making a financial assumption about a second date before the appetizers are even cleared is a remarkably bold move.
It is essentially a polite hostage situation.
Yes, exactly.
So we're locking them into a second date just to balance the spreadsheet. But let's look at the 50-50 split.
Okay, let's look at
A
it.
lot of people would argue that the 50-50 split is bulletproof. It's pure math. You eat half the fries, you pay half the bill. What is the flaw there?
The flaw is that 50-50 only means equality if you both walked into the restaurant with the exact same financial reality. And that polite fiction we create on the first date, that we are perfectly equal financial entities, becomes a massive liability when the relationship gets serious.
That is a phenomenal transition, because that ambiguity over a $40 dinner check doesn't magically disappear when a couple gets serious.
No, it doesn't at all.
It actually compounds. When you move from paying for shared appetizers to paying for a shared mortgage, a hidden variable blows up that polite 50-50 math.
Unequal incomes.
Exactly. Unequal incomes.
This is where we have to look at the macroeconomic reality. The March 2025 Pew Research data provides a really sobering context here.
What is the data showing now?
It shows that while the gender pay gap has been narrowing over the last couple of decades, it remains remarkably persistent.
Okay.
Even in modern households where both partners work full-time, there is often a distinct income disparity.
Right.
When you pair that reality with the YouGov data on how couples handle household bills, the idea that 50-50 is fair completely breaks down.
But let me push back again, just representing the skeptical listener here.
Sure, go ahead.
Doesn't proportional splitting, you know, where you pay a percentage based on what you earn, breed its own kind of resentment?
How do you mean?
Well, if I worked incredibly hard, got promoted, and I am earning $140,000 a year, and my partner's earning $40,000,
Okay.
why should I be penalized by having to pay 75% of every dinner date or utility bill? That doesn't feel like equality. That feels like subsidizing.
I get that. It feels like subsidizing if you view the relationship as a transaction between two competing businesses.
Fair point.
But let's look at the mechanism of what happens to the lower earner in a strict 50-50 scenario. Imagine a $100 dinner.
Okay, so $50 each.
Right. Splitting that dinner means you both pay $50. But that $50 means something fundamentally different to the person making $40,000 versus the person making $140,000.
Right. For the lower earner, that $50 is a significantly larger percentage of their total available resources.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just the percentage. It creates a phenomenon called lifestyle drag.
Lifestyle drag. What is that?
So the higher earner naturally wants to live a lifestyle commensurate with their salary. Nicer restaurants, better vacations, maybe a more expensive apartment.
Sure, that makes sense.
If they insist on a 50-50 split for that lifestyle, the lower earner is quietly drained. They are going into debt or completely sacrificing their own savings just to keep up with a baseline budget they didn't actually set.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the higher earner thinks this is great, we are equal partners, while the lower earner is experiencing chronic financial stress.
That makes perfect sense. So true fairness in a partnership isn't about matching the exact dollar amount. It is about equalizing the burden.
Yes, perfectly said.
A proportional split acknowledges the reality of the individuals. It ensures that both people feel the same relative financial weight when they pay for a shared experience.
But here's the catch. Arriving at that proportional split requires you to actually know what the other person makes.
Ah, right.
It requires transparency, which brings us to the exact thing our sources show couples avoid doing at almost all costs.
The early money talk. It really is the final boss of dating. If rigid rules fail and 50-50 math is a trap, the only way out is through. You have to communicate.
You do.
But how hard is that, really?
According to the Fidelity 2026 Couples and Money Study, it is incredibly difficult.
Right.
The study highlights a massive behavioral paradox. Couples overwhelmingly desire shared financial goals. They desperately want that alignment and security.
But sure, everybody wants security.
Yet a vast majority profoundly struggle with avoidance. They hide money issues, they carry secret debt, and they delay the financial conversation until it reaches a crisis point.
Instead of just discussing it when it is casual.
Exactly, rather than bringing it up when it is just a curiosity.
And the psychology behind that avoidance makes a lot of sense. Money isn't just numbers on a screen. It is tied to survival, to security, and to self-worth.
Totally.
So for the listener tuning in right now, how do we practically apply this? How do you actually bring up money early on without turning a casual date into a forensic financial interrogation?
Right, nobody wants that.
Nobody wants to feel like they're being audited over their dessert. And just to be completely clear, we are talking about relational dynamics here. We are not handing out professional financial, tax, or legal advice.
Of course not. The most effective strategy is shifting the framework from adversarial to collaborative. You don't start by demanding credit scores and tax returns.
Please don't do that.
The Wise and Talker research gives us a brilliant behavioral economics trick for this. They found that the physical environment drastically changes the psychological outcome of money talk.
Wait, the physical environment. How so?
Couples who sit face-to-face, staring each other down across a table while talking about money, are far more likely to get defensive.
Really?
Yeah, it mimics an interrogation or a negotiation. But the Talker research found that couples who physically look at a screen or a spreadsheet side by side experience a 40% drop in argument rates.
A 40% drop just from changing where you sit.
Just from moving your chair.
That is a massive aha moment. Explain the mechanism behind why that works.
It works because shifting your physical posture changes your mental posture. When you sit side by side looking at a shared focal point, you are no longer adversaries negotiating against each other.
Right.
You are teammates facing a shared puzzle. The psychology moves from me versus you to us versus the math.
That is incredibly practical.
Yeah.
And you can apply that same collaborative curiosity early in dating, long before you ever share a spreadsheet.
Definitely.
It is the difference between asking an interrogative question like, how much are you putting in your retirement account?
Yeah, don't ask that on a first date.
Right. Versus asking a philosophical question like, what was the best piece of advice you ever got about money growing up?
That is the perfect entry point. It opens up a window into their values without triggering their defenses. You can learn so much about whether someone is a spender, a saver, if they view money as a safety net or as a tool for experiences, simply by asking how they handled their very first paycheck as a teenager.
Or even just observing how they react when that first date bill comes.
Oh, absolutely.
Do they assume? Do they ask? Do they steamroll over your input? Those micro-interactions are early indicators of how they handle communication when the stakes are low.
Exactly.
Because the goal of the early money talk isn't to force an immediate agreement on everything. The goal is simply to establish that money is a safe, open topic in this relationship.
Which brings us to the core insight woven through all of these sources. From the PubMed historical analysis to the Pew and YouGov data, right down to the Fidelity behavioral studies.
What is that?
When we ask who pays, we are fundamentally focusing on the wrong thing.
I would argue that is the most vital takeaway of this entire deep dive.
Yeah, for sure.
The healthiest answer to who pays isn't about the transaction itself. It is not about whose credit card has better rewards.
No.
It is entirely about whether both people have the emotional capacity to talk about money openly, honestly, and comfortably before hidden scorekeeping and resentment start to take root.
Because resentment is the silent killer of relationships.
It really is.
It thrives in the space where unspoken expectations live. I want to leave you with a final, lingering question to ponder the next time you're sitting across from someone, coffee in hand, and that server drops the check on the table.
Okay, let's hear it.
How might the way you and your partner negotiate that simple $40 dinner bill actually be a sneak preview of how you will handle a mortgage, a sudden medical crisis, or an entire shared life together?
If you like AI Dialogue Lab, like, subscribe, share, and turn on notifications.